Hi, my name is Danielle Liso, and I'm the Assistant Director here at the Center for Autism and Related Disabilities at the University of Florida in Gainesville. Today we're going to be talking about 6 questions that you can ask yourself when you're assessing the behavior of a child or student. The first question is, what makes the behavior happen and where does it not happen? In other words, what environments do you see the behavior commonly and what environments do you not commonly see the behavior? It's easy to evaluate the behavior in certain environments, but it's also helpful to evaluate the behavior in environments where it doesn't happen, because there might be something magical happening in that environment that you want to replicate in the environment where the behavior is common. The second question is, what makes the behavior start and stop? So if you think about a little infant, sometimes you're not really sure why they're crying. So the best thing that you can do is just take your best guess and try to figure it out. So first you change their diaper. If they're still crying, you know that it wasn't about a wet diaper at all. If you give them a bottle and they stop crying, then you know that their crying was a way of indicating that they were hungry. The same is true of challenging behaviors in kids with disabilities. The first thing you want to ask is, what makes the behavior start? Because if you can figure that out, you have a good sense of what triggers the behavior, and you might even be able to predict it or prevent it. And then, of course, what makes the behavior stop? That usually requires an understanding of the function of the behavior or the reason that the behavior is happening, because a behavior usually stops once you gain access to that function or that need. The third question is, does the behavior represent a skill or a motivational deficit? A skill deficit is what we refer to when a child really can't do the thing we're asking them to do. A motivational deficit, on the other hand, is when a child can do the skill, they just don't want to. When you have a skill issue, the way to address that is by teaching a new skill, teaching an adaptive or replacement communication skill, etc. If it's a motivation issue, then you really have to focus on the reinforcement side, or how you're going to motivate or inspire the kid to want to do the right thing and make the right choices. You can't really motivate a child to do something that they don't actually know how to do, so this is a pretty important question to ask. The fourth question is the child trying to get or get away from something? Really, when it comes down to it, there are only 2 reasons why a person does a behavior. They're either trying to gain access to something or get away from it or escape it. So for instance, if a child wants more, that's their way of saying they want to gain access to more toys, more attention, more food or drink. Similarly, if they want to escape something, they might use their behavior to tell you that they want to get away from a work task. Maybe they don't want their food and drink anymore. Maybe they want to escape a noisy environment. So to get or to get away is a really great way of assessing whether or not the child is motivated to gain access to something or to escape it. The fourth question is related, and that is, what is the child trying to communicate with the behavior? As I said before, we like to think about behavior as having a function or a purpose. And so another way to think about that is the communication message behind the function or the purpose. So I like to tell people that when a child is acting out, try to picture that thought bubble over their head. In other words, that bubble that you see in a cartoon or in a comic strip that indicates that somebody's having a thought. Whatever's inside that thought bubble, that's the communication message or the function. So it might mean, I don't want to do this. It might be, I don't feel good. I don't understand. I need a break. There are lots of different possible functions, but it helps to think about it as a communication message. And then lastly, how can I replace the behavior with an appropriate alternative? So the whole goal of asking all of these questions is to eventually say, what am I going to do about it? If we have a skill issue, as I mentioned a moment ago, we're going to work on teaching a skill to make up for that skill deficit. If it's a motivation issue, we're going to motivate the child to act in a different way. Both of those require that we teach an appropriate alternative. So if the child is used to pulling hair or crying or screaming or saying bad words or whatever it is that they might be doing, and that's served a purpose for them, it's worked for them in the past, now we have to kind of convince them that that's not going to work anymore. And the best way to do that is to teach them an appropriate alternative that's easier and even more efficient than the behavior that they're used to demonstrating. So if you're able to ask yourself these 6 questions, it's going to get you on the road to being able to develop a pretty good behavior plan to address these behaviors. Please be sure that you watch other videos in this series, as well as other videos available on our website. Thanks for joining us.